My 20F boyfriend 21M lied to me about his past. How do I heal from this? Should I forgive him? This is my first Reddit post and honestly it's a lot, so please bear with me. I'm still trying to figure out how to process everything and make sense of it all. I guess we will start at the very beginning. My boyfriend, we will call him Michael, and I just passed 6 months together. Honestly, he's been great. We clicked pretty fast and have a great bond. I feel safe and comfortable around him and can communicate in a way I've never been able to before. It just kinda works. I definitely fell hard and fast for him, and from what I could gather, the feeling was mutual. We had met on Tinder in early October and went on our first date in November. We made it official shortly after our first date. After we started dating, he had briefly mentioned that he had a friend who had a bit of a crush on him. I told him I didn't mind and I trusted him. As long as he kept things respectful to me, it didn't matter. He then explained that her crush was a bit obsessive and he actually wanted to push her out of his life and needed advice. Apparently, this friend, we will call her Beth, was pregnant and wanted Michael to be her baby's godfather. He said that she would follow him and got jealous when he was with other girls. I found this kind of odd, but he swore they were just friends, so I told him the best way to let her down gently and let him do his thing. About 2 weeks later, he told me she was out of the picture. I didn't really care either way, but the communication was cool. Anyways, I pretty quickly forgot about all of that because it was irrelevant and I wanted to focus on our relationship. One night when we were hanging out, he got a Snapchat notification. He turned away from me to respond to it, but I didn't think much of it, just asked who that was. He said it was just a friend, we will call this one Jen, and they were catching up. I had never heard of her before, but I didn't care. I just said cool and dropped it. Just like before, I quickly forgot about that conversation because again, it was irrelevant and I had better things to think about. I trusted him, so why should I care who he talks to? He is his own person after all, and I understand the importance of friendships. Fast forward about another 2 weeks later, him and I had our first argument. I don't remember what it was about. Most likely something small and pointless because I had a stressful day at work, but nothing too serious. We did not talk much that day. Later that night, I apologized and we talked it over. Everything was fine. He then told me that earlier in the day, an old friend that he had removed off social media re-added him and messaged him. We will call her Molly. Apparently she had just noticed she was removed and was upset and wanted to know why. He told me that he sent her a message explaining that he didn't see her in his life long term and doesn't feel the need to keep someone around who won't be around forever, so he didn't want to be friends anymore. He then removed her again. At this point I thought the way he acted was odd. I had never heard of Molly before. He waited until he had already removed her before telling me about the conversation. She only came into the picture when we had our first argument, and it got me thinking about the other girls who were just friends. I definitely started to overthink a bit and was more than curious about who these people were and what their relationship to him was. But he swore they were all just friends. So I continued to believe him. We went a long period of time without anything coming up, so once again I forgot about it and moved on with my life. Him and I were doing great. We were young, dumb, and in love. I felt truly happy, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I felt like I genuinely found someone who was right for me, and I didn't need to second guess whether or not he was gonna cheat on me. He occasionally would ask to see my phone, but I didn't have anything to hide, so I allowed him. I had set a boundary with him that if he ever felt concerned or needed reassurance, he needed to bring it up to me first. After we talked it over, then he could see my phone, but we would always go through it together. This seemed fair to me. My phone was never off limits, there just needed to be open communication. Anyways, he would always offer for me to see his phone in return, but I would decline. I didn't feel the need to, and I had learned from past experiences that if you go digging, you will most likely see something you can't unsee. Then one day he needed to have his wisdom teeth removed. I dropped him off in the morning for his surgery, and I was told I needed to hold on to his personal belongings and wait until the operation was over. No big deal. I know this is wrong and I shouldn't have, but finally curiosity got the best of me and I looked on his phone. At first it wasn't malicious. I genuinely was just curious. But of course, I saw things I wish I could unsee. It started off on TikTok. In one of his conversations with a friend, he poured his heart out, explaining how he was still so in love with his ex and missed her like crazy. Of course it stung a little to see the things he said, but I knew there was someone before me, so it wasn't that surprising. That was until I saw those messages had been sent in mid-October. So of course I was like, huh. We started talking early October and dating early November. So clearly he wasn't over his ex when he met me, but I was willing to forgive it. It wasn't a deal breaker. But instead of putting the phone down to protect my peace and his privacy, I kept looking. And boy did I find a lot. I found lots of old text messages from contacts that were not saved. Most of them were hardcore and flirting. This dude literally acted like a dog. And yeah, it was again hard to see, but it was before me and he wasn't like that anymore. With me, he was gentle and respectful and never treated me like an object. Some people just go through a phase and that's okay. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker. But finally I found some very passionate, lovey, intimate messages with an unsaved contact. I was immediately drawn in by the kind words and heartwarming love messages. Whoever this was, they cared for each other very strongly. I almost immediately felt heartbroken. Not because she was a past love interest, but because he had never spoken to me the way he spoke to her. I read all the way from the top of the conversation, months worth of love confessions, paragraphs of strong feelings, longing to be with one another, etc. But finally halfway through in one of the paragraphs I see a name. Molly. I was shattered. Molly was the girl who supposedly was removed months before him and I even met. The one that was just a friend, who messaged him and he removed her because he didn't want to be friends anymore. Yeah, clearly they were more than just friends. I was livid and felt crushed. Why did he feel the need to lie about something so unnecessary? I wouldn't have been mad if he had told the truth about who she was. But then it got me thinking. Was Beth truly just a friend? Was Jen truly just a friend? What was the actual relationship? I gathered up as much as I could, but then the nurse came to the lobby to tell me he was awake and ready to go home. I kind of panicked and in my hurry, I forgot to delete the screenshots out of his phone. We get in the car and I give him his phone. He's still pre-loopy. Obviously I had a million questions to ask him, but I knew he wasn't in the right state of mind to have that conversation, so I put my feelings aside and decided it could wait. Well, he wanted to take pictures of his bloody swollen face and send it to his uncle. In the process, he sees the screenshots I had forgotten to delete off his phone and immediately screams, "What the F is this?" I tried to talk calmly and explain that now wasn't a good time to talk about it and it could wait. He kept pressing, "What the F did you do? Who the hell is this?" In my mind I thought, dude, you tell me." But didn't want to escalate it while he was drugged up. I decided the best option was to simply say that I wasn't mad. I still planned on taking care of him while he recovered and that we would need to have a conversation when he was in a better state of mind. He just started sobbing. Oh boy, I kind of ignored it as much as I could. I drove us to the store to get ice cream and other soft foods he could eat before taking us back to my apartment. I helped get him set up in my bedroom and he still was crying. So much so he started coughing out blood. It smelled awful and got everywhere. He was a wreck. I felt bad for everything. I felt guilty for going on his phone behind his back, for leaving the screenshots on his phone and for him crying. It took several hours, but eventually I got him to calm down. I kept my word and continued to take care of him until he was recovered. Finally, when enough time had passed, I decided it was time to sit down and talk about it. I explained that obviously I had found messages and I wanted an explanation. He told me Molly was just a friend, and very clearly it was more than that. I also explained that I had a suspicion that he was not fully honest about his relationship with Jen and Beth either. He looked me dead in the eyes and said he had no idea what I was talking about and they were just friends. I remained calm and explained that I won't be mad at him or leave him. I told him I didn't want to fight. I just felt as though I deserved to know the truth if I was going to continue to be with him, especially since he was still in contact with Beth and Jen while we were dating. We continued to go back and forward for several hours with no progress. I decided then if he didn't feel I deserved the truth, I would find out for myself. I took the screenshots I had found and reached out to the contacts one by one. Let's start with Beth. She was the quickest to respond. I briefly explained who I was and that I was hoping to ask some questions about my partner because I felt like I was being lied to and was hoping she could fill in some of the gaps. She texted back and simply asked, "Do you work at blank?" I responded that yes, I did. She then asked if I lived at a specific apartment complex. I said yes and was creeped out. She knew where I worked and lived. She then asked if she could call me. I agreed. For some context, he told me that she was a friend he had met in school. He explained that she had gotten out of a rough relationship and he wanted to make sure she was okay when it happened. That's how they became close. He explained that they would hang out all the time and eventually she became obsessed with him. Well, during my phone call with her, I heard a very different story. Yes, they met in school and initially started off as friends. But, slowly with time as they started to spend more and more time together, they started to catch feelings. He said I love you first. And she proved this with screenshots. She also sent me pictures of them holding hands and kissing. She explained that they never officially started dating, but they definitely were more than just friends. Their relationship was much more physical and romantic than platonic. She also told me that they had hooked up about 3 times. She explained that they had each other's location and pretty frequently they would make plans, then he would last minute cancel. So she would see what he was doing and would see him at 2 very specific addresses. Visiting my work or my apartment. She eventually asked him where he was and he told her that I was his cousin and was trying to get out of a rough relationship, so he was helping me. I felt sick. No wonder why she was obsessed. He was borderline dating her, telling her he loved her, and then started to ditch her when he made things official with me. Then me to realize that even though they never had an official title, he was dating the 2 of us at the same time. I didn't know what to do. I ended up apologizing to her for everything he did and told her I never would have agreed to be his if I knew he was entertaining someone else. Michael overheard this phone call between us and looked like he had seen a ghost after. All he did was started crying, said she was lying, and that she was only a friend. I asked, so, these screenshots and pictures are all made up? No response. He knew he was busted. I decided I needed to take some time to process that information and I didn't want to say something I would regret. I let him stay at my place because he had nowhere else to go and I went to stay with a friend. He kept calling and texting but I couldn't deal with it. I cried all night. I was a mess. I should have just accepted that I was cheated on and lied to, but I couldn't leave. I needed to know the truth. So I kept reaching out. Next up was Jen. I never was able to reach her, but I found out through Michael and Beth that Jen was Beth's best friend. But even more than that, I found out the 3 of them had a together. He had told me previously that he had never been interested in a, and would never want to have one. Then I found out not only did he have one and lied about it, but it was with 2 girls he told me were just friends. I went back to my apartment the next day and tried to talk stuff out. He just continued to say they were just friends. I finally snapped. I screamed and cried and told him that I just wanted to know the truth. That I deserved the truth. He looked me in the eyes. Pinky promised me no more lies. We talked for a while and basically he explained that he never had an official title with Beth. They were very close but he basically just used her to pass time because he had nothing better to do. He said he loved her because that's what she wanted to hear and he treated her like a partner without ever having any real feelings for her. He knew as soon as he met me that he wanted me but didn't want to hurt her, so he just kind of pushed her to the side but kept her in the picture. I felt so sad for her. He used her. He led her on. He treated her like an object and then threw her to the side when he met me. I asked why he lied about having a. He said he felt ashamed. Apparently they started to do it and then he chickened out, so he didn't really count it. That made sense to me. I was pissed that he lied, but at least it made sense. Next I asked why he told me Beth and Jen were just friends instead of being honest about the relationship. He said he never had feelings for either and they never had the official title, so he didn't think it was important and he did not want to scare me off. I explained to him that although I understand why he lied to me, I didn't forgive him. I warned him that I would not tolerate any more lies and obviously for the time being I did not trust him. I told him I wouldn't break up with him, but if I found out he lied again, he would lose me. I also told him I considered what he did as cheating since he was seeing us at the same time after him and I became mutually exclusive. After we concluded our conversation about Beth and Jen, I started thinking about Molly and the messages I had seen. I asked him what their relationship was. He said just friends. I freaked and told him to give me his phone. I found their old messages and told him to read them. Hey goofball, you awake? Well, if you're not, I have something impossible to say to you. You are my sun, my moon, and all my stars. I love you lots and want you to know that no matter what happens I will always care about you. To me you are perfect, amazing, and attractive ASF. You are also very sweet and caring and adorable. Don't think about the negative things about yourself that will drag you down. You are way more than that. This is an official good night and I love you goofball. Is just one of the many messages sent back and forward. He reads the conversation and just goes oh. He then says he didn't remember any of that happening. We began to argue and the story he tried to spin was that his life must have been so traumatic that his brain literally deleted his past memories and replaced them with false memories where he didn't do these things that he is ashamed of. He got caught in lies and after so long was just like, whoa, I did that? I had no idea, I didn't remember. Technically, I didn't lie because I told what I thought the truth was the way I remembered it. I told him I wanted to break up and he cried and begged me to forgive him and stay. I listened. I tried to move on and make things normal again, but I couldn't stop thinking about all the lies and what else he might have been lying about. Then randomly one day, Molly added me back on social media. She was the last and took over 1.5 months, so honestly I figured I'd never get a hold of her. I was genuinely surprised to see her show up on my friend list and reached out. Once again, backstory, he told me that she lived in Wisconsin and they had never met. He said he was also using her for nudes and to pass time, same way he used Beth. He had told me that he removed her off social media months before him, and I even met an aside from that one night she reached out, he hadn't heard from her in forever. I found out from her that she did not live in Wisconsin, she lived in the same state as us. That to her, they were definitely dating and in love. I also saw a message saved on Snapchat where he had been texting her in October after we met and even sent her the same pickup lines he had sent me. He had cheated with not just one, but two at least that I know of other girls. At this point I had been broken so bad I didn't even feel the pain anymore. I just went numb. I had no more tears left to cry and couldn't be bothered to care anymore. I stopped eating and taking care of myself. I just went to work, came home, slept and repeated. I had watched the man that I loved and adored, one that made me feel so safe and happy, turn into a monster right in front of me. He wasn't him anymore. I finally could see him for who he was. But I still didn't leave. He told me that he had only ever slept with 3 girls. I later found out it was actually 6. He told me he had never been in love before. I later found out he tells basically every girl he's ever talked to that he loves them and genuinely was in love with his ex before me. He told me after his ex and him broke up, he had a rebound, but he only hooked up with her once before ghosting her. I found out they actually dated for several weeks, hooked up several times, and she had taken cute couple pictures with him and posted them on social media. He said that he never wanted to take those pictures. She made him put his hands on her and pose, and if he didn't cooperate, she would throw a tantrum like a child. One last thing I think that is important to mention, when we went on our first date, I told him I don't do hookups. We stayed out late and hit it off really well, so I offered for him to stay the night at my place. I said I was okay with cuddling and whatever, but I did not want to have. He seemed okay with it. I went to bed, and then when I woke up, my pants were off and he was inside me. He claimed he didn't know I was asleep and thought I wanted it because apparently Mike kept rubbing against him while we were spooning. It's been about a month since all that and I'm still just meh. I haven't exactly forgiven him, but I also don't hate him. Things are normal. I act normal, we still do couple things. But I can't help but wonder if he is just using me the same way he used them. I mean, after all, he lives in my apartment rent-free and asked me to buy him a truck for his birthday. He says I should forgive him because he genuinely doesn't remember doing these things and he didn't mean to lie to me. He said he's so ashamed of who he was but isn't like that anymore. He doesn't associate with who he was and wants to be given a chance to show that he is different. But can I ever forgive him? Should I? Where do I go from here? I feel so lost and confused. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust his word again. I don't feel secure. He broke me so bad I can't even feel anymore. Am I crazy and somehow making this a bigger deal than it is? Can I ever have the man I fell in love with back? I'm sorry if this was confusing. I'm typing this all out in one sitting. Please help me because I genuinely am so lost and I don't want to tell any friends because I don't want them to hate him. TLDR. My boyfriend cheated on me with at least 2 other girls that I know of at the moment and has lied to me about too many things to count. His argument is that it doesn't actually count as cheating because he technically didn't date these people and he didn't remember doing it.